All right. Well, let's just get started here. I think we'll let people trickle in. So thanks for joining us, all of you guys, so far here to today's or this month's Pebbler's Mastermind. And we have got a very special guest today. We have Jaron Barnes from RE Tipster. Okay, hold on, Spotlight for everybody. There we go. Now you're center stage. Awesome. Jaron, how you doing?
I'm good. Yeah.
Thanks for I know I was just mentioning it, and for those of you guys who are joining, a little bit of personal life with Jaron. He has the second one now, and life is I guess changing or getting crazy now.
Yeah, definitely. It's an
Well,
honor to be here, guys. Thank you for the invite for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on this show. So basically, we want to bring you on to talk about sort of what you're doing. I know you do things a little bit more creatively. Um, Specifically, we're going to talk about offloading your land through real estate agents, why you do it, and essentially we'll spend, I don't know, 10-15 minutes on that. Then we'll just open the floor up for Q&As. Whether you have questions for Jaron, or you have questions about Pebble, ARIA conversion, whatever it may be, you can throw it our way. We'll sort of have an open discussion. That's typically how these mastermind meetups work. Yeah, I guess we'll just start here. So, Jaron, can you sort of share a little bit about your background in land investing and how you got started there?
Yeah. So I used to work for a company called Simple Wholesaling based in Indianapolis, and we had Seth on the Simple Wholesaling podcast, which I was the co-host for. And I knew Seth from for a while. For a little bit, I worked for Bigger Pockets, and I think I like edited his blog post or something. Um, and we ended up having him on the podcast, and I was just very intrigued with the land business because it had a lot of the same perks as wholesaling houses, but a lot less drawbacks. So it was just 100% upside. And I noticed that not a lot of people liked to talk about land because they thought it was boring, or they just couldn't grasp how real the opportunity was with it. So I offered Seth to moonlight the land master class at our tips there and do an in-depth review and all of that. And he took me up on the offer. So he let me take the course for free. And then from there, I implemented my first direct mail campaign, and I was off to the races. I remember, I actually can, like, in my head, go back to the very moment that I got my first motivated seller call in the land business. And it was so funny because my wife was driving. I was working on my laptop. We were in the car, and the guy, I got the voicemail, and I called the guy back, and I was all shaky. My voice was like, "Oh, hello, sir." And the guy was almost like mad. It was super weird. He was like, "I got one of these letters a long time ago, and I wasn't interested in then, but he offered me $6,500 for the property. So if you can give me that, I'll sell it to you." And I was like, "All right, that sounds like a plan." Because I think we ended up listing it for like, I think 19,000 or something, and I was like, yes, I will definitely do that. So even though we advised against this, I actually drove like 2.5 hours to meet him in person. He was in like the northern tip of Indiana. And so I went and met him, and it was really interesting. His brother owned the parcel right next door, and he was trying to say that I'm not going to give you access to this property. And like, there's all this drama, but despite all that, within 3 to 6 months, we ended up selling it and made probably, with closing costs and everything, probably $8,000 spread. And it's just, you don't find these kind of returns in any other type of real estate investing. It's absolutely the best. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. How many years ago was that?
So that was, I think, 3.5 years ago at
Oh,
this point, which
wow.
is
Okay,
crazy. Yeah.
gotcha. And so one of the things that you do differently is you sell through real estate agents. You offload your properties that way. So can you
Yep.
sort of tell us, I guess, well, tell us why did you go through that path?
So I kind of stumbled on it on accident. I first started the land business in Indiana, where I live, and I ended up switching to Florida. But when I first got started, just because I was working full time and I didn't have I didn't really have the luxury to be able to like post on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and all this stuff, and because that was like the biggest bottleneck of the business, at least for me. And so I just kind of thought through, because how we sold property, one of the ways we sold properties at Simple Wholesaling was by listing the houses on the MLS, and sometimes agents would contact us for selling property. I was like, I wonder if I could do the same thing for land. And so I just tried it. I
Mm.
found through Mossy Oak Properties, a land specialized real estate agent in Southern Indiana. And he actually did not do a good job. Like he was brand new to the business. And, you make all the mistakes in the book when you first get started, right? But
Yeah.
I just kind of went with him, and we started, selling properties. He ended up kind of screwing up a particular deal. So I stopped working with him. And then shortly after ended up moving my operation to be in Florida. But when I
Ah,
first got to Florida, I was like, well, nobody else is doing this agent thing in the land business. So I'm gonna like do what everybody else does and do Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and try to build a buyer's list and do all this stuff. And I think how it ended up happening was my wife was helping me out. And she listed the property on Facebook Marketplace, and then we were approached by an agent that had a buyer. And I was like, well, if it's working with me posting it on Facebook, I might as well just circumvent that whole process and just use an agent. And
yeah.
so between me and it was really my wife. I have to give credit where credit's due. She kind of worked through the process and vetted a bunch of people, because most agents specialize in single family houses and they don't know anything about land.
That's
And a
right.
lot of agents will tell you, yeah, I can list your land property, no problem at all. And then they're just going to take it and put it on the market, and you're going to be sitting there for years before it sells. And so obviously, you want to avoid all of that, but we kind of through trial and error just developed a process to find land specialized real estate agents. And at RA Tipster, I actually have a blog article, retipster.com/land agent.
Yep.
And in there, I just recently added a tutorial video of how I use the agent profile on Zillow, and I look at the the ratio of land properties sold, like because on their agent profile you can check their past listings, and so I'll look at their solds in the past and compare the ratio of land versus other types of real estate. And then if they do a lot of land stuff and based on their profile, then I'll reach out to them and kind of take it from there. So if you guys are interested in that, I definitely check out that.
What's that link again?
Tipster.com/land agent. It might be agents, but I know it's either land agent or agents.
I'm gonna type that in. RE. Oh, sorry here. Kevin, do you mind typing that in? It's retipster.com/land agents, was it?
Yeah. I don't know if
Okay.
it's if with the S or without the S, but
Okay. Awesome. So, I wanted to quickly talk about that as well. But before that, I mean, there's obviously some pros and cons associated with using a real estate agent to offload a property. Why don't you sort of, give us the quick rundown of what you think are, the pros and the cons of using an agent then?
yeah. So starting off with the cons, you definitely have to pay a commission, right? And so that means that ultimately the amount that you walk away with is going to be less than if you were to list it on your own. That's probably the biggest drawback. Another negative is if you do a lot of seller financing, it might be tough to find an agent who will do seller financing deals with you. Now, if you're dealing in a tier of property where the down payment might be 5 grand or higher, then you might be able to work something out and give them a portion of the down payment as their commission, or maybe the down payment as their commission, and then you kind of make your money on the back end with through the payments and through the interest. But I found that if you're going to be using agents, it's typically better to focus on cash deals. It just keeps things more simple.
Right.
And because my main gig is already tipster, my land business is very, very passive, and is not time intensive at all. I'm fine with just doing cash deals because I'm not living off my land business. But if you were dependent on cash flow and doing a lot of terms deals, you might run into some issues there. Now, the pros are pretty awesome because, again, for me, the biggest bottleneck in my land business was having to post everything, write up descriptions, respond to is this still available on Facebook Marketplace, and all of that, right? So that was that's the biggest benefit, is that I literally focus on getting a deal. And then once I close, I literally hand it off to my agent, and then I just wait and I collect a check later. I don't have any buyers list. I don't have a buyers facing website, any of that stuff. Another major benefit is that you have boots on the ground. So every property that I buy now, I have somebody walk the property before I buy it. And because they have their pulse on the market and they already have buyer leads in place looking for stuff, they're going to be able to verify my comps. So a lot of what my process looks like is I'll send a lead to my agent and say, hey, check this out. What do you think I can sell this property for? Listed price to sell quickly within 3 to 6 months. And then they're able to give me within typically $2,000 to $3,000 what I'm going to be able to sell the property for. And then I can work my numbers back from there. So that's a huge benefit. Another thing too is, like, because they're walking the property, it really helps from the due diligence side as well. Because Florida, for example, you might have a situation where on the wetlands mapper, the property is not listed under wetlands, but if there are cypress trees on the property, in all intents and purposes, it's pretty much in wetlands. You're not going to know if it has cypress trees on it unless you have somebody go and see the property. So, that's something that is a major benefit. And another aspect is that when I used to do the whole Facebook Marketplace thing and servicing buyer leads myself, one of the things I kept running into over and over again was people were asking to meet in person. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I live out of state. And they'd be like, well, they'd get super sketched out. Like, well, how do I know you're not just a scam artist? And that is completely removed because they go and meet the agents at the property and they conduct tours and walkthroughs and all of that.
Right.
What are you typically doing for a commission, Jaron?
Yeah, so typically it's 6 to 10%, and 9 times out of 10 they bring the buyer. So it kind of comes out to what you would typically spend with a residential house property. It's roughly 6%, but that's normally split between the buyer and the seller's agent.
Right. Yeah.
So this time, with land, it's like 6 to 10%, but they normally bring the buyer.
Okay.
Now, if somebody's making the transition from, going from the traditional way of listing themselves or selling themselves, and they're gonna, explore this route of working with an agent, are there any surprises that, take land investors by surprise, or that happen typically when they sort of transition to work with a real estate agent?
I think you just really need to go in with trusting but verifying, because again, a lot of agents will tell you, yeah, I specialize in land. I'm the greatest land investor or land agent ever. And they really don't know what they're doing. And there were a couple of times when we were first getting started and we didn't know how to vet people properly, where I remember one particular agent, he just would talk and talk and talk about how he wants to fight for us and be my advocate, and like was going way overboard, trying to sell me on how amazing he was. And he didn't even go buy properties. He was doing the same kind of research that I was doing from a computer screen. So like, you just have to really, really know that they're an actual land specialized agent. So if you can figure that process out, I think you're good to go. But I do think that it's really wise to, in terms of a listing agreement, start off with 3 months before you, have in the beginning, when you're first establishing a relationship with them, you should have it where your listing agreement is only 3 months long. So in case you have to back out or they turn out to just be nothing but talk, you can move on very quickly. And they should be, if they don't have anything to hide, they shouldn't have an issue with that.
That makes total sense. If somebody is going to explore this route, oh, my question just popped out of my head here. Well, let me jump into my other question here. So do you sell land yourself anymore, or is it all just completely hands off then?
Yeah, as of right now, I'm always experimenting in my land business because I kind of use it as a guinea pig to figure out cool strategies that I can then turn around and teach through our tips there. But as of right now, yeah, exclusively through land specialized real estate agents.
Okay.
Now, Jaron, one thing that I have been hesitant about switching to an agent is let's say I get a property and I want to have an agent start to sell it for me. So I hire an agent. Typically they're going to ask me to sign a contract on that property. What then happens if a buyer reaches out directly to me through my website or buyer's list or something? Would I then just have to give that buyer and say, hey, contact the agent? The agent is the one responsible. Is that how that works?
It depends on your agreement. So if you
Okay.
have an exclusive right to sell, I think, or like some exclusivity agreement, I forget the technical term for it,
Mhm.
then yeah, you have to, any lead that comes in, you're going to have to pay that agent a commission on anybody who buys the property. But you don't have to
Okay.
structure the arrangement that way. You
Okay.
can set it up where you pretty much say, hey, if you bring me a buyer, I'll pay you a commission. If I bring myself a buyer, then I won't pay you a commission. And it depends on the agent, but a lot of agents would be fine with that because it makes
Okay.
sense. If you're building your own brand and you have your own list of buyers and they don't work for it, then that's fine. But a lot of
Mhm.
them, especially kind of more aggressive, maybe younger in the industry kind of thing, they'll be very open to that because a lot of them have buyers and they don't have property. So if
Right. Yeah.
it depends on where you're at, but if you're in a market that's in high demand and you can get great deals, then they have buyers for that and they'll be totally happy to work with you.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that much about land investing and selling through a real estate agent. Again, if you guys want to learn more about what Jaron does and sort of some of his information on selling with agents, you can head over to what Kevin posted in the chat there, retipster.com/land agents. And by the way, if you are also looking for a land investing coach, Jaron is actively coaching others. I think he sort of has his process on how he does things, but feel free to reach out to Jaron as well. I hear nothing but great things about that. So
Oh,
uh,
thanks, man.
I'm curious, what other sort of experiments are you running right now? Unless you can't really share, or um, is that sort of under the wrap?
Yeah, no. So the two biggest things that I'm experimenting right now is in certain states there's a right to access law in place. So
Right.
in Florida, it's called an easement by necessity. And so I have a property right now in Jacksonville, and it's been a pretty extensive process, I think, because of COVID primarily. But essentially, if you have a property that's just one parcel removed from access, if the neighbor refuses to give you an easement, by law, you can sue them for easement access, and it's a guarantee that you're going to get it. So I'm experimenting what that would look like. I bought a property for $2,000 and I have probably about 4,000, 5,000 in it right now. And, maybe by the time it's done, there might be another 1,000 or so, but let's say I'm all in worst case for 8 to 10 grand. The assessed value of this property is 50,000. And so I don't know if, what's going to happen, but if I know that one of Seth's biggest deals is he bought a property that he thought was landlocked for $500. And then he ended up selling it for 25,000 because he found out that it wasn't actually landlocked. And so I'm exploring this as a strategy, just trying to see, okay, is it really feasible to intentionally buy landlocked properties and then, walk through the process to get easement access? Because more often than not, the neighbor's probably going to work with you. And then if you have a situation where the neighbor doesn't work with you, then you can just go through an attorney and then sue them. I hear that Arizona has similar laws as well. And with
New
this,
Mexico also has the same situation.
interesting. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely exploring that as a possibility. And then another thing is
So
targeting. Oh,
Jaron, on that
yeah.
landlocked thing, does that then just mean hiring a lawyer straight away to start figuring out how how to get it, or do you reach out to neighbors directly? Like, how do you get that process started for getting your easement?
Yeah, so I would reach out to the neighbors first. And so I
Okay.
would do neighbor letters, explain to them, hey, I'm your new neighbor and I need access to my property. And then
Yeah.
just kind of explain to them if they give you some pushback, say, hey, according to the law, here's like a sample of, you could be talking to them on the phone or however you communicate with them, but you could actually say, cite the law and say, I don't want to get ugly or anything, but I have the right to access this property and I'm going to have to get an easement.
Okay.
And just really try to be friendly and try to be cordial and try to avoid having to go through, lawyers and all of that. But then if they
Right.
refuse, like in this Jacksonville property, surprisingly, the neighbor is a church and a graveyard.
Wow.
Both of them, for whatever reason, just were not easy to work with. I'll just put it that way. And so,
Aye, aye, aye.
after a couple months of going back and forth, I reached out to an attorney because Mike Ferreira in the land community, he's based in
Yeah.
Florida. And he's like, hey, I think I just saw it randomly in like the Facebook group or something. And I was like, wait a second, what? And the timing was perfect. So then one of my agents that does Clay County and Duval County knew of an attorney based in Jacksonville that specialized in
Okay.
real estate, and then she connected me to him, and so I've just been going through that process. It's been really. He told me that normally it's about 4 months from start to finish on average, but it's
Okay.
been much more than that. It's been probably 6 to 8 months, something like that.
And do you have any idea what you should expect to pay a lawyer to kind of walk through that process?
Yeah, so I just asked him what kind of an idea of what the average cost will be. If you do a lot of
Okay.
volume, I think you're going to be able to kind of get a flat rate instead of like be billed by the hour, like kind of per
Right.
deal basis.
Right.
He quoted me. He said that if we start doing a lot of volume, he would do, I think, $4,500 per property.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, if you buy your $2,000 property, pay $4,500 to get it unlandlocked, and then man, if you can sell for 50, that's like
That's a
way
huge
worth
deal.
your money.
Yeah. So I mean, and I know that a lot of people. We just interviewed a guy who specializes in buying properties from county auctions. The podcast hasn't gone out yet, but I think, I don't know, we're like 6 weeks out of that interview going live or whatever. So spoiler alert. But he talked about how one of the example deals that he gave was that he bought properties that were landlocked and went through the process to get easement access. And then he also used an example of getting a property that doesn't pass the perk test to actually perk. And that's
Right.
another way to kind of drastically increase the value of the property without actually developing anything. And so, those are kind of the obscure things that I'm experimenting with.
Yeah.
And with these experiments that you're running, I'm assuming this is, the content that you'll post on RE Tipster. So if people want to keep up with what you guys are doing, make sure you head over to RE Tipster. That's where I started. That's where I think Kevin also started at. And
Yeah.
you know
Best
what?
blog in the business
I
for
remember
sure.
the good old simple wholesaling days too. And I remember you on there.
Yeah.
Man, that's been a long time ago too. So
Yeah, it's been a
long
while.
time
It's been
ago.
a journey.
Anyways, I want to open up the floor for people to ask questions. Again, this is, Jaron, thanks again for sharing some of your insights here. And I'll actually be bringing you onto the podcast to talk a little bit more about what you're doing and this particular strategy as well. But I'd like to use this time, if you guys have any questions, again, whether related to land investing, Pebble, REI websites, let's throw it in here. Let's throw it in the chat. I can bring you on the air as well, and we can sort of chat here. So we'll try to, if there's a lot of questions, we'll try to keep it to a limit. But there's not, we can sort of ramble on here.
So Levi is asking here, how about clouded deeds? Is there an opportunity to buy properties from tax sales and then clean up the deeds?
Levi, I'm going to actually unmute you here if you want to unmute yourself. And
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. So I bought some property. I actually bought 10 lots one time from this guy out in Arkansas. I didn't realize that he had purchased those properties from a tax sale. that didn't, they went back maybe like a couple years. So, I think Arkansas has like a 7-year law. So for 7 years, the title's clouded. I had issues selling those properties because of that. Anytime a buyer would come, I actually do what you do. I started off selling on Facebook, and then I just moved on to using agents, and I find that to be much better, much more profitable. I think they just get, much better, more money per deal.
Yeah, I agree.
And the first property that I did with an agent, she came. We were all excited. Closing day was coming close, and then this came up. The title company didn't want to give insurance because it was clouded. So I had to go in and
Mm.
sell those on Facebook on terms where that's just easier to sell them that way. Um, is there? So I called different attorneys. One wanted like 1,500, one wanted like 4,000. The range was pretty wide. The properties were very cheap, were like $500. I was selling them for like $6,000, $7,000. So it wasn't really worth it to go with an attorney. But is there an opportunity there? Have you done that in the past? Have you cleaned up titles in order to sell them? I'm trying to just get rid of those. I'm doing one at a time. But just in general, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I always go through a title company before I buy, and if there's any clouds on title or any major issues, if they're not solvable through the title company, then I typically just shy away from it.
Oh, you don't
I,
use title to buy? You don't self close?
I don't self-close. No, I used to. I did quite a bit, but I just had some really close calls that really kind of sketched me out from that whole process. I would rather, even if I'm buying a property for $500, I'd rather pay $800 on top of it to make sure that I have title insurance. There was one property that I bought real cheap, I think for like $1,200 or something in Florida when I first started I transitioned my business out there. And we had a buyer. We went through title on the selling side, and I did my best to do a title search on my own. I even hired like a VA that specializes in doing title searches for me to kind of just like have a sanity check. And there was a lien for $50,000 on the property, and it was
Yikes.
like, oh my goodness. And luckily, we were able to I forget exactly how, but we were able to get that cleared up. But I mean, I almost was in a situation where I was like, well, crap, I'm on the hook for 50 grand. Another situation was we had a father had title in his name, but originally had it in him and his son's name. And his son was in, I believe it was the Bahamas, and he was in Florida. So again, I bought it, self-closed, hired a VA to do the title search in addition to my own title search. And when we went to sell, we went through title, and then they said, no, you can't sell this without, getting the son to sign off. So I had to overnight documents to the Bahamas and just flip a coin to see if we're actually going to find the guy and actually get him to sign off on the deed. And luckily it worked out, but it was a 50-50 chance as to whether or not that deal was going to fall through or not. And so for me, here's the thing, title experts, they spend 40 plus hours a week doing title searches, and yet they still make mistakes on top of that. And that's why there's title insurance. So if title is that complicated, or it's so easy to miss stuff, for me, I'd rather just get the title insurance. One final example of kind of proving my point here is back at Simple Wholesaling, which is a large wholesale operation. We used to sell 25 to 30 properties a month, and we didn't assign contracts. We actually like bought everything in-house, closed on it, and then turned around and sold it. There was a property, I was the disposition manager, so I was responsible for selling properties. And there was a buyer that bought one of our properties, and I think it was like, it had to have been like probably 4 to 6 months later. She came back with a judgment, and she's like, hey, there's like some lien or judgment on this property for like 30 grand, and you sold it to me. But we had gone through the title company, so we had title insurance on it. Luckily, otherwise we would have been on the hook for 30 grand.
Right.
And all we had to do is trigger that just go through the process of having the title insurance do its magic, and she got paid out and everything was fine. But if that wasn't in place, we would have been hurting. So for me, again, it depends on what type of property you're buying. If you're specializing in buying property between $500 and $1,500, it might not be feasible for you to always go through a title company, but I would rather buy and sell between like $5,000 and $15,000, so I could justify going through title.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Levi. Joe has a question here. Joe, I'll ask to unmute you. You can ask yourself, but I'll read it out. With agents, you probably have to pay more for closing fee. Sorry, for closing also besides the 100. Sorry, besides the 10%. Agents will close with a title company. How do you handle the handle costs there?
Yeah, so like I was just saying, I always go through title. So yeah, I'm definitely paying commission and closing costs, and I'm paying closing costs when I buy and when I sell. Luckily, if you establish a good relationship with a title company, they will cut you a break typically on fees because they know that you're going to be going through them on both the back end and the front end. But I just make sure that I'm in a buying property that's expensive enough to justify roughly $1,000 plus an additional probably another $1,000 to $1,500 for a commission, and still having the margins make sense.
Yep. Paul asks, for term deals, is there a strong tax reason to either structure it with 0% interest versus with some positive interest rate?
So I'm not a CPA and I'm not super experienced with term deals to be able to speak to that. So do you guys know, Jesse or Kevin?
Nope.
I know that I tell my CPA that I'm doing these terms deals and they figure it out for me. That's basically.
Speak to a CPA.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have to jump to the next one here, and I also have a question that was submitted through email earlier, and which I'll answer here. And I think here we go. Here's another question. I'm a new agent in GA. If you want to retain the right to sell yourself and not pay a commission, you can use an open listing, like Jaron said, or an exclusive agency listing. Exclusive right to sell means the agent gets the commission, even if you find the buyer yourself. Okay, makes sense. Awesome. Thanks very much, Derek. I had a question come in from Sean, and it's actually on the Pebble side of things, actually. Kevin, do you mind sharing your screen? And sort of the question was, how do you, and I'll sort of pin you, I don't know if this will work, but let's see if this works. Essentially, how do you add images? And this is a common question that we get a lot of as well. Is essentially, sorry, how do you add images on your documents inside of Pebble?
Yeah, just a second. Okay, so images on your document. So is this like neighbor letter images, or is this like a signature?
Yeah, let's do both. Letter images, and then just images in general. So even adding your face shot or your signature, how does one go about doing that?
Sure. Yeah. So let's here I am in Pebble. And so if you want to add an image to a document template, you'll go into settings and then over to templates. I'll just create a basic we'll just create like a I don't know, inbound contract. So from here you can basically insert images from this little image button thing. So if I click here, and then it's going to ask for images, put a logo here, and then that'll just show up there. So once you save this document, or save this template, sorry, then anytime you generate a document using this template, that image will just be in there. So that should work for most things. I know a lot of people will like upload an image of their signature, so their documents just pre-signed with their signature there.
Right.
Some people like to put their logos up at the top here, so that's how that works. Any other questions about template images there, and then I'll show about the other ones.
Yeah, let's jump into the document one. Sorry, with the placeholder.
Yeah. So a couple of our templates, well, mainly the neighbor letter template, will allow you to upload images of the property. So you want to send send a neighbor letter, you want to show them like a map image or a physical photo of the property so they know what you're talking about, that you're kind of legit. So when you add a neighbor letter, you'll see that at the bottom of here, it says it has this images placeholder. So you can just leave that as is, and we'll just create this template here. So we now have a neighbor letter template. And then if I go into one of my properties and I want to sell or I want to send a neighbor letter for that property, I can just go over here to documents. And then actually, before I do that, I'm going to upload some images to this property. Oh, I guess we do have some. Okay, so we've got some images. It's Mount Rushmore. We're selling Mount Rushmore today. So if we go over to documents, and then I'll create the document, I'll select that neighbor letter. And then you'll see as I'm filling out this neighbor letter information, it's going to ask me to select some amount of images to go along with this neighbor letter. So I'll just grab 2 of these images. If you had like a map image or a street side image, you could do that as well. I'll just say this is, I don't know, 10,000, 10,000, and then I can save that. And we should see here that when it generates the PDF, we then have our 2 images down here. So this will go out as like a 1-page letter with the images on there.
Awesome. Sean mentioned here, would be good to know the parameters for the images. Hasn't worked for uploading images. He assumes he might have size pixel format issues.
Okay. Yeah, if your images are super large, like above, I think the limit we set was like a megabyte. So if you can make sure your images are under a megabyte, that'll probably be very helpful.
Yeah, typically if they're coming from your photographer, you'll want to make sure they're web ready. A lot of people have their sites up and don't realize they're just getting their raw images from the photographers, even if they're shooting from a mobile phone. I mean, I saw people who were uploading photos that were 25 megs in size and filled up their entire site's capacity. So you need to make sure when you get your photos from your photographers, tell them, I need web ready photos. Essentially, that means they're compressed in size. They won't necessarily mean they'll drop in quality. What it means is it's just probably not best for printing, high resolution images, but they'll be perfectly fine for screen. They'll be perfectly screen ready and clear. So that's just something to keep keep in mind. Same with when uploading images onto Pebble here.
Yeah, and in Pebble we will adjust the images resolution wise, but if you're trying to upload a 25 meg image, that is just going to take. The problem is that it'll take like 3 minutes for your computer to upload that. So you'll be sitting there watching it spin for 3 minutes as it uploads everything. So, so that's why you want to just make those a little bit smaller.
Awesome. Any other questions that you guys want to sort of throw this way? While Jaren's here as well, we're really lucky to have him on this. Any other questions? Sharonda, you mentioned to me privately here that your images are broken and you're fixing them tonight. And I asked you if that has to do with your website images or Pebble. So do let us know. And you can always reach us through email. Now, if there's nobody with questions right now, and if there is, go ahead and type it in. I do want to let you guys know that if you are a website owner, an REI conversion website owner, you don't have access to Pebble yet, shoot us a message. We have an extended offer and access for you guys that have websites. So shoot us an email at hello@reiconversion.com. We do have an extended trial for you guys to get in there, even to take advantage of our mailing rates. The other thing is, if you haven't joined our tribe community, shoot us an email. That is not inside of Facebook. It is group that is outside of Facebook. And I know some people have gotten pretty good value out of there. So make sure you shoot us an email and we'll get you in there.
Yeah, some great conversations happening over there.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. And some of you guys might have known there's some major website changes on our marketing side and on Pebble side of things. The last week has been pretty crazy for the entire team here at RE Conversion as we kind of run around here and get things transitioned over to our new system. Yeah, sorry, I've got a question here from Paul. He asks, is a tribe community within Pebble's interface? Yeah, so there's a little icon on the bottom right, a little widget that you can hit. And I believe there's that community button there that'll bring you to the community, but you still need to request to get access. So you'll still need to shoot us an email if you'd like to get in there. Aside from that, if we don't have any other questions, I really appreciate all you guys joining us here in the New Year's. Jaren, thanks again very much for coming on here, sharing your strategy. Again, if you are interested in learning more about Jaren and what he's doing, you can find him over at RE Tipster. Their blog is amazing, retipster.com. Seth is very involved with us as well. And then that post that you were talking about, that was retipster.com land agents or agent. Not sure which one it was specifically, but that talks about, how to find an agent for selling your land. Is that correct?
Yep.
Awesome.
I have a question for Jaren, if I may
Yeah.
ask. If it's too long of an answer, so I guess we could just skip it. How do you price your offers? I know it's a very general question, but that's like the hardest thing for me. How do you price your offers? I've been pricing them pretty much at the bottom of the sold data on Zillow. Like, that's pretty much what I'm doing. It works sometimes it doesn't. Do you have any other tips or tricks?
What state are you primarily doing business in?
I'm doing Arkansas, Florida, Arizona, and now I'm in Texas.
Okay. So if you are doing a non-disclosure state like Texas, I don't know what Arkansas is, but if you're doing something like Texas, there's kind of two different approaches that you can take. One, you can use active list prices and then factor in a discount. So go to Zillow, take the lowest 3 to 5 comps on the market, and then kind of get your average price per acre, and then factor in an additional discount, like maybe say 20% as an estimated sold price. Okay. And then use that, and then factor in your discount percentage, whether it's 30%, whatever. An additional way, especially in Texas, I hear that their assessed values are extremely accurate because it's a major revenue source for the state. So if you just wanted to do a percentage of the assessed value, if the assessed value is pretty accurate, that's a really easy way to do it, because you literally just create a column right next to assessed value and then just multiply by the discount percentage. So that's how I would do it. Otherwise, if you're in Florida or what have you, it's not a perfect system, but I think lowest getting the average price per acre with sold data in places like Florida is a good route to go. The one thing, unless you're literally comping out every single property, there's gonna be prices that you make that are just wrong. And unfortunately, sometimes it's fortunate though. Sometimes you would offer more on a property and they end up accepting your offer. So that ambiguity is kind of a good thing, but unless you like literally comp out, look at all of the closest properties in proximity to your subject property, those are kind of the best routes to go.
So in Texas, assessed value, so let's say I have this assessed value, you say it's accurate. So what percentage of that I will be offering?
So again, it depends on the market. Like Florida, for example, I'm pretty aggressive because it's a pretty competitive state. So like I'll go in with like 35, sometimes up to 40-45% on the dollar. In other states though, that's crazy. Like I hear, people say in New Mexico, they can offer 10 cents on the dollar and still get deals. I don't know if that's true, but
I work in New Mexico and I know that the way that they calculate assessed value is not full market value. They take full market value and it's like 1/3 is their assessed value. and then they charge a tax percentage based on that 1/3. So it's like it's very confusing how it works for raw land. But basically, yeah, if you like offered assessed value, your offers are going to be 30% of market. So
And Seth says that in Michigan it's similar. That he says that it's like half of market roughly. So I think that the best way to price properties really boils down to what market you're in and what's going to work best for that particular market.
And I'll also just say that for me, it took me probably 6 months of mailing to the same county just to figure out where the different pockets of value were, just to know like, okay, I'm not buying anything on this side of the county. I'll buy things over here in the subdivision. I can charge this much.
What's a good rate of a return of mailers deals?
In terms of what I'm getting callbacks on?
What's a good sweet spot? Like how many mailers you do? You do like 2,000 letters, 1,000 letters, 3,000 letters?
I'm doing probably about 3,000 to 4,000 a month. I'll get a response rate of about 1%.
Yeah.
And then I pick up maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 5 that I get a response on.
Actually, Levi, Travis did a really good post in our group here inside the tribe community. He sort of broke down his how many number of letters he sent in and the different market values. So it shows what his sort of number of accepted rates and the number of properties he bought in that range. So how many letters he had to send to get a property essentially. So shoot us a message. You'll get in the community, you can see it and actually probe Travis on that. Now, another thing is if you're lazy about pricing, you just don't know how to go about it. There's a service called Priced. You can also check out. I've heard decent things about it so far. So that's, what they'll do is they'll pull the data. They essentially are, I guess, and they have access to data tree and they're a vendor of data tree. I don't know how it works. And then essentially they're able to pull all these comps in their database somehow and price everything out for you. And you can make adjustments on that as well. So you can check those folks out. I've heard good results with that. So that's another way.
Is it priced?
Yeah, it's Priced. It's spelled PRYCD.
PRYCD.com?
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any other things? Anybody want to get in anything here at the end? Awesome. Well, thanks again for all you guys joining. Again, if you want to reach out to Jaron, is it Jaron at retipster.com, the best place to reach out to you?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, thanks again, everybody, for joining. This is our first one of the entire year. In a few weeks' time, we'll be doing our next update roundups. There's a lot of stuff that we'll be working on and launching, and we'll be talking about that on there. And if you guys see any bugs or anything happening in the new interface, shoot us a message. It is still fresh. So we've only got a limit of eyes on it. So more eyes, the better. So thanks again for everybody joining, and we'll see you guys soon. Jaron, thanks again.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, guys. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thanks, Jaron. Great stuff today.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.